Welcome one, welcome all to DeFi Crypto and Airdrops, DeFi High, brought to you by DeFi University and David. How's it going, brother?
Outstanding, Mike. Doing well today, man. Doing really well.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry about yesterday. I got a call right in the middle of the show, and my truck tree jumped out in my driveway, and I ended up sliding into it. So. Yeah, it's the insurance called me like right during the show, and immediately after the show, we actually didn't do. We're rescheduling the DeFi Masterclass because I missed that one as well because I had to drive like 3 hours into the nearest city that actually had a body shop that my insurance authorized. I had to ride with the tow truck driver. It was this whole thing. So I apologize for that. We'll get that show out either this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon. What else did I have to announce? Well, tonight we got the red pill. Anybody that's familiar, it's always a good time. So we're I'm sure David will be on. We're looking to have Colin and one of his buddies, Total Tool, on that Colin was saying would be a good fit. So, and of course me and Jeff. So it should be an interesting show tonight. I'm sure we'll get into all kinds of conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But other than that, let's go ahead and jump on into it. Oh, I'm in the process of starting a Claude bot as my personal assistant to help out with the show. So
cool, man.
I'll give an update on that as it progresses. I finally got it to install on an old laptop. So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I can't wait to see what you're able to throw together with that Claude bot, dude. I've been working on some really cool stuff too. So I'm gonna be with DeFi Dawn tomorrow. We're going to the Tampa. There's this thing that we're doing in Tampa with a bunch of crypto entrepreneurs, and bro, it's going to be super cool, man. So hopefully I'll be able to share some news about that at some point next week. Don't want to spoil the surprise or anything, but yeah, man, like I'm really looking forward to this course material here today. Let's hop to it. Yeah. I've got a couple of items here. Let me just bring up StreamYard. I want to share my screen there, and let's see what we can learn about not getting wrecked. That's a good thing.
What? I thought that was half of the fun was getting wrecked all the time.
Nah. You don't want to do that. And, an easy way to avoid getting wrecked, number one, is just don't use leverage. Like that's an easy way, number one. Yeah. But at the same time, these assets are so volatile. These digital assets have like levels of volatility that are, at minimum 5 times greater than what you see in traditional markets. So like extreme volatility means that even if you don't use leverage, you can still, damn near go to zero. So only invest in these speculative digital assets, many of them anyway. Only invest what you can afford to lose, especially if you're taking a look down the risk curve and, you're looking at like the number 3,000 coin and you're thinking, it's going to, moon and when Lambo, like, okay. if you're thinking like that, well, probably just want to put in what you can absolutely afford to lose. You do not put the rent money into the number 3,000 coin, okay? So it's almost going to be like gamma bling money.
Hold on. I'm closing out my my meme coin full port position right now.
I know, man. But look, Mike, you see down there, it's gamma bling money. It's not gamma savings. Bling. You gotta do you gotta get the bling from the gamma on the coin. Yeah, man. So the AI made a little bit of a spelling error there. But don't use your rent money to trade altcoins or even to invest in digital assets, period. It's something that you shouldn't use money that you can't afford to use on. So let's just scroll down through this a little bit here, why this matters. Awesome. Okay, this is going to be a good video. The golden rule of crypto. Here we go.
If you spend any time at all.
Well, let me open this up. And I just want to make sure that I can actually hear this on my end too. So I'm going to hop on over here, external headphones. There we go. And we should be good.
All in the crypto space, you've heard this a million times. It is the one piece of advice that literally everyone seems to agree on. But just because we hear something over and over doesn't mean we actually get it. So today, let's break down what this really means. I mean, what does that phrase actually mean for you in real life? Is it 10 bucks, 1,000, 10,000? Well, here's the thing. It's not about a specific number at all. It's about a specific order of doing things with your money. And getting that order wrong, well, that can be absolutely devastating. Okay, to really get this, let's use an analogy. I want you to think of your entire financial life like you're building a house, right from the ground up. You wouldn't start by decorating the attic before you've even poured the foundation, would you? Of course not.
Tell me what to do.
So how would that actually work? Like, if you haven't built the house, but you're starting to decorate the attic, and why would you decorate the attic? Like, I don't know many people that decorate their attics. Usually that's like a storage space.
I do.
But you decorate your attic, Mike? What type of decorations do you have in your attic, bro?
I got a dungeon up there.
You got the dungeon?
Yeah.
Oh God.
Exact same logic applies to your money. Now look at how clear these steps are. It's a blueprint. First things first, you pour the solid concrete foundation. That's your emergency fund. We're talking 3 to 6 months of living expenses, tucked away somewhere safe and easy to get to. Then you build the first floor, making sure your rent, your bills, all your essentials are covered, no question. Next up is the second floor. That's your long-term, stable retirement savings. And I mean only, after all of that is built and secure, do you even start to think about what to put in the attic.
Okay, so this is going to be really, really difficult, I think, for the vast majority of people because money's broken. The U.S. dollar is
a lot of
broken.
people don't have, in reserves 3 to 6 months of living expenses. A lot of people out there are living paycheck to paycheck, and even a larger amount is living off of credit cards. You can look at the data and see it.
I know, and I wish that there was some reasonable solution to this first problem, but just getting the foundation laid where you've got 3 or 6 months of expenses taken care of, just stashed away, earning 4%. Mike, it's super hard, man. It's super hard.
Be honest, if it wasn't for my military retirement, I mean, I'd be struggling right now. The fact that I don't have a mortgage and I have my military retirement and other streams of income, dude. I don't know how some people are making it. Just with the cost of rent or a mortgage. With just a regular job, making 70, 80, 90 grand a year. If you got a wife and kids and, freaking all those kinds of bills and a mortgage or rent and, food and gas and car payment, insurance, I don't know how people are doing it.
They're not. Like if you're living in California and you're making 70K and you've got a wife and 2 kids and a house,
you're probably living in your car.
You're probably like barely able to buy food.
2 years ago when I drove down there to trade my truck in and get my new truck, I drove through the hills above LA, coming down into the city, going to my brother's place. And anywhere that it was, legal for somebody to park, it was, just cars, everywhere, just, little 4-door cars with like towels, it rolled up in the window for privacy. People were living in their cars and, they'd take the towels out and drive to work. And, I'm sure that a lot of them were taking showers at the gym. So, have a gym membership for $20 a month at Planet Fitness or something. And you can go in there every day and take a shower. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure, man. Or a bird bath somewhere.
Yeah.
But this part, the attic part, I think, there's this desperation that sets in where it feels like getting the emergency fund together and getting to that point where you've got 3 or 6 or 12 or 18 months of cash, like to take care of all of your expenses so that now you can focus on building something amazing. Getting to that point with the foundation, it feels, and it is impossible. It feels that way. It's not impossible, but it feels that way. And so I think what that forces people to think about almost out of desperation is to take a look at, trying to decorate the attic part with, the speculative number
Oh, yeah.
3,000
Oh,
altcoin?
put a couple, the couple $100 you got into a meme coin and hope that it 100x's for you.
Right.
That's what I think a lot of people are doing. Like they're treating it like it's the lottery.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. And, for a lot of these tokens, it can be just like gambling on the numbers racket. Like the mob used to run the numbers racket and then the state took it over. That is now the lottery that we all
Yeah.
know. And, so like people treat speculating on number 3,000 coin as like, gambling, which that's what it is. But they,
Mm.
they do it to try to build the foundation, man,
Yeah.
because it's so difficult to get even to this point.
Mhm.
And it wasn't always like that, like it was not always like that in the United States. It used to be that, prior to the, before the 70s, it used to be that, one man, one income stream
Yeah.
could take care of a family and have a home and have two cars and go on
Dude, there's
vacations.
people now with dual incomes, and I was the tow truck driver that drove me to town yesterday was talking about how he had two jobs. He was a tow truck driver and he had a second job just so that he could, build that foundation. He was talking about, oh, I was, got a second job because I was wanting to do a bunch of work to the house and I just didn't have the money. So, he was freaking burning the candle at both ends just so he could come up with the money to, do what we're talking about.
Exactly, man. And let's say that you are, you bust your ass and you work all day, you two jobs, and you get that 6 months of expenses set aside. Well, then, okay, you got your essential bills covered. Now you've got to start thinking about retirement savings.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the retirement savings part, the problem with that is if you start stashing money away in a savings account, as we've learned, throughout these earlier courses here, number
You're
one, you
losing
don't own, you're losing money, like, and you don't own it. You don't
now.
actually own it. The bank does,
Yeah.
and so if something goes wrong with the bank, well, they may not pay you the money that you think you are owed for weeks or months or maybe never. So you don't actually own anything if you've got money in a bank. And then if you're earning 4%, that's the treasury yield. Well, if inflation is greater than 4%, then
Which
you're actually losing
it
money.
has been. It's been
Right.
between 7 and 10. You're
Right.
losing 3 to 6%.
Right. And it's pernicious because you don't really see it. What you see is the
There's
number
those big.
going up.
You're
Yeah.
losing. You're losing me
Oh,
for Nick.
yeah,
You're
pernicious. It's
losing.
bad. It's bad.
I got one syllable words. I like it. Good.
Yeah, it is bad. I'll just start making grunting sounds.
You know what? I speak that language.
You
I
speak
speak that.
grunt?
I
Yeah,
speak.
you're fluent.
I was a grunt in the military. So
Well, there you go, man. But like if you've got money in a savings account and you're earning 4% and you see the number going up every month, every year, the problem with that is your purchasing power is not going up. Like what you can buy in terms of goods and services with those dollars in that account is going down. And so the reason I used that word pernicious is because it's bad and you don't see it. It's almost hidden. So
yeah.
that's basically what pernicious means. It's bad and hidden, kind of sort of. So like you're stashing money away in a retirement savings account, you're actually not making any progress. And so again,
And I'll give you an example. I mean, I have family members, older family members. I don't want to, name them out, but I have older family members that still have that traditional mindset. They're in, in their 80s, 90s, around there, and they have that older mindset. They grew up during the Depression. It was all about, stashing money away in a savings account, and that was your nest egg. That was
yeah,
just how it was done, and they're still doing that. And so, I just kind of passively, I know that it's not for everybody. I kind of, passively mentioned to them, like, there's savings accounts because they're looking to earn about 5% a year just so that they can, live off that. They're very well, established, but that's their spending money. And so I was telling them, I'm like, I know a place where, you could very safely could, make anywhere between 5 and 10%, very low risk, if any, if you're interested. And they were just like, nope, 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 not interested. We're just because they are that old school mentality, where sticking it in a savings account. And I kind of explained to them, about the inflation thing and the devaluation and the spending power of the money that they have in the bank, and they just didn't want to hear it. So I was like, okay, cool. I'm not gonna push the issue. Just wanted to throw it out there.
Yeah, it's such a shame though, because here's the thing: it used to be true. Like their mindset used to work.
Yeah,
that used to be a thing, but it's no longer true. And it's the same thing with legacy media. Like I think that's why so many people still consume that type of content, because they're still those news channels are still trading on their reputation from 1960.
Well, back in the day, they were held accountable. If they, there wasn't this rush to break the news. There was investigative reporting. So if there was a serious, news, story that was, broadcast, I mean, it had been checked, double checked, triple checked, because they had integrity and their reputation was on the line. Now it's just a race of who can break the news first, and if it's wrong, it's like, oh, our bad. Maybe
it's even worse than that.
Yeah.
Like they're literally activists now, posing as journalists. But we don't have to go down that rabbit hole. We'll do that later tonight.
Yes. Join us tonight for the red pill.
Exactly, man.
All of us will be drunk. We might be crying. I don't know.
There's no crying in baseball.
There's no crying in baseball? No, it's the good movie. But we'll be talking about
right there.
Yeah, let's see let's welcome to the attic, Mike. Welcome to Mike's attic. It's crypto's.
Come to my attic.
Look at this. It's crypto's proper place.
All right.
It's exactly where cryptocurrency lives. It's not the foundation. It's not the first floor, and it is definitely not your retirement plan.
Especially not for a beginner. It's just not. Like it's too volatile, too much to learn. Too many ways to make mistakes that you could avoid. So it can't be the foundation for a beginner.
Unless you've taken those previous steps, like you said, after you've built the foundation, you framed the house, you put the roof on, you've done all that. And then, here comes the attic.
Right. Exactly.
It belongs squarely and only in the attic. So here's the key. This is how you define attic money. It all comes down to what happens if it vanishes into thin air. If losing it all would be a huge bummer, sure, disappointing, but not devastating to your life, you're in the right spot. But if losing that money means you can't pay your rent or buy groceries, that is a critical mistake. It means you tried to furnish the attic before you even built the house. And make no mistake, a storm will always hit. In crypto, volatility isn't some rare event. It's a feature, not a bug.
Right. Like, Mike, what have we seen over just the last couple of weeks in crypto? It's been extreme volatility. But that extreme volatility, bro, is totally normal. Yeah. That's the thing.
And that's how a lot of people like yourself, make good money is, with that volatility. Because, if how to read charts and, you understand all that stuff. I don't. But, I wish I did, because I'd love to be, dipping my toes into that, making a couple 100% or more, in a couple of hours. I'm just having to stick to the, the safe DeFi thing and, make 40, 50, percent a year.
Yeah. I'm not trading with any leverage. And, what I track mostly is funding rates now. That's basically what I track. But the difficult part is the sitting. That's the hard part. It's not analyzing the chart and building a thesis and executing the trade and entering a position and building the position. It's really more about the sitting in the position once you're in the position, because the volatility of these assets is so extreme that
I'd push back on that a little bit, because that's my strength. Is I am totally unemotional and I can sit on my hands through just about anything. But I tried trading and it seemed like I never timed my entries and exit right. But I would I would let it, basically, liquidate me, if I was using leverage, before
that's the thing.
Yeah.
That's the thing though, the leverage, so, what was Warren Buffett's right-hand man? What was his name again? Charlie Munger. Buffett and Munger had this saying that there were the 3 L's: ladies, liquor, and leverage. those 3 L's, killed more guys than anything else.
Yeah, those 3 L's will get you every time.
Yeah, man. So yeah, watch out for that leverage though, because it's pernicious.
And when that market crash,
Yeah, I mean, so you don't need leverage. That's the thing. Like you can sit in a position when you don't have leverage. No leverage.
Maybe that's what I need to do is try it again, but just stay away from leverage.
Yeah, zero leverage. So that means not even 1.2x. That means there's no leverage that's safe. There's no such thing.
There's no getting liquidated.
Right. Well, so there is. If you don't use leverage, you can still go to zero. Like,
yeah. But it's if you're in a fundamentally strong project, like if you're in Bitcoin, at current levels, it can go way down. As long as it goes back up, you're fine. There's no place that you're gonna get liquidated.
Right. So you wouldn't have to worry about any liquidation level on if you're long and you buy Bitcoin using like a perp stacks with no leverage, then you don't have a liquidation price on the downside. But you've got to really track the funding rate, because that funding rate, if you're paying funding, it can and will slowly eat away at your initial margin. But if you're earning funding, then you're actually getting paid to be long. So that's the thing you got to track is the funding rates.
I might need to talk to you offline about that because I need to get into some kind of position like that, and I feel like where we're at in the markets, it'd be a good point to get in some longs and just with no leverage and sit on them.
Oh man, I don't know. Not quite yet. Because like I'm looking at the Nasdaq and the stock market, and hey, if there's any type of normal correction out of the stock market, then I think that we would see that next leg down out of crypto. So like I'm thinking about, hey, when do I want to start buying? But for me anyway, and look, I don't have a crystal ball. No one knows the future.
Well, do me a favor. Send up a flare when it's time to when it's time for me to get in, because you have a better compass than I do.
I will be buying all the things when it's time to buy.
All the pretty shiny things.
All the things.
All right.
For right now, I think not quite yet.
All right.
And it will. It's going to test the strength of the financial house you've built. A 50% drop. In the regular stock market, that's a historic world-ending crash. In crypto, that's
an afternoon.
A regular Tuesday.
And so, but here's the thing though, Mike. Imagine you're trading Bitcoin with leverage, 10x leverage, and Bitcoin has a minus 5% session. So during one day, Bitcoin's down 5%. You're levered long 10x. That means your initial margin, you're down 50%.
Yeah.
Like, what? 50%? So that's the danger of leverage. You can lose everything in a couple of moments.
Well, if you put in $1,000 and you're doing 10x leverage, that's it's like you're trading with $10,000. That's to the upside and the downside. It works both ways.
And I think that this is a little bit outside the scope of the DeFi High School, but the funding rates too. So if you're levered long 10x, you put up $1,000 as margin, you borrowed $9,000 from the DEX. Now you've got a $10,000 levered long position with $1,000 in margin. If the funding rate is really positive, then you're paying that funding. So if you're levered long and you're paying that funding and it's super positive, then you could actually see your initial margin just be down 10% per day just because you're paying funding. So you've really got to just and that would be even if Bitcoin doesn't move. Like Bitcoin could move sideways and you could lose 10% or more in a day just because you're paying funding. So the funding is super important to track here. And when you see numbers like this though, minus 50%, this is totally normal in crypto. And so again, this conversation here is about not investing or not, entering crypto with money that you can't afford to lose, especially when you're just getting started, because this type of volatility is normal, so even without any leverage. So you got to be careful.
It happens all the time, but it can get so much worse.
Right. Oh my goodness. So, they say that your first loss is your best loss. And this is why. Because let's say that, you bought, some random coin, right? And it's down 50%. And you didn't, you didn't bet the farm on that coin. You bet what you could afford to lose. But okay, it's down 50%. You took the loss. You said, hey, you know what? I'm down 50%. I don't want to sit around. My thesis is wrong. I was wrong. It's okay. Every trader, investor has losers. I'm going to go ahead and exit this position. And then the coin continues to the downside, and now it's down by 90%. That's why your first loss is your best loss if your thesis is invalidated. So down 90%, though, again, this is normal in crypto. And an asset can be down 90%, and then it can be down a further 90% from there.
Yeah.
And then a further 90% from there. Like these things can damn near go to zero, but stay just barely above zero. So yeah.
And some of them might rebound, and make it all
right.
back. You don't know.
Yeah. I've seen that happen. But it's rare, but it does definitely happen.
I've seen drops of 90% or even more. And that's not just some obscure coin. That's happened to major assets. And countless projects have gone straight to zero.
Yeah.
Poof, gone. Now, this isn't about trying to scare you. As the source material points out, this is simply a fact. It's history. Bitcoin itself has crashed over 80% multiple times in its life. To ignore this history is like building your house in the middle of a hurricane zone and deciding, you probably don't need storm shutters. And this right here, this is what happens when that storm hits, and your foundation is just exposed. You're forced to sell at the absolute bottom because you desperately need that cash for rent. And that financial stress, it just explodes outwards, wrecking your health, your relationships, everything. This is the real human cost of not following the rule.
Yeah, I mean, how many people do we know of in this space who have made some catastrophic fatal error? When you're building stuff and you make an error that can kill everything, it's called a fatal error. And risking what you can't afford to lose, and then even worse, using leverage, that can lead to this type of situation. So to avoid this, just when you're getting started, trade super small, invest super small, and only what you can afford to lose so that you can learn without having the emotional heartache. Because if you've got too much skin in the game and something goes wrong, your body is going to tell you. You're going to feel that. You're going to have anxiety. You might not be able to sleep.
You'll be constantly checking your positions and doubting yourself. Yeah,
exactly.
And no one's immune. I mean, I've seen major influencers. In the 5-6 years that I've been in crypto, I've watched major influencers just ninja vanish. They had huge followings, and they lost everything. They over leveraged.
So they ninja vanished, dude.
They vanished. No, it's the bear market came. They didn't hedge their the risk. And they were in the wrong projects or whatever, and they literally lost everything. And just couldn't face their audience, trying to tell them how to invest and stuff like that, and they were basically shilling these projects, and they lost everything, and most of their audience lost everything if they were listening to them. So that's one of the big reasons why I don't tell people. It's like, I'm like, listen, this is what I'm investing in. You need to do your own research. This is what I found. Now do your own research, and if you believe in the project, invest. If you don't. We're not one of those channels that are going to try to tell you what you should and shouldn't be investing in. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell you the good and the bad on every project. If I find anything, but yeah, take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah. You really got to do your own research at the end of the day. You can't just take anyone's word for it. You got to go you can't be lazy. Like, you've got to go and do the work on your own.
Let's make this crystal clear with a quick story, a little tale of two investors. Let's meet Tyler and Priya. So they both have $500, but their approach is night and day. Tyler knows he needs $400 of that for bills and textbooks, but he's got a bad case of FOMO. He throws the whole $500 into a risky coin, convinced it's his ticket to the moon. Priya, on the other hand,
dude, look at him. Tyler is he looks pretty anxious, like maybe he's freaking out a little bit, because he just took all of his rent money, all of his grocery money, all of his textbook money, and he just threw it on some random, random coin because he thinks it's going to the moon. Dude, yeah, don't be like Tyler.
Is smart. She secures the $400 she needs for essentials. She puts it aside. It's safe. Then she only invests the $100 left over, her attic money. And her mindset is everything. She's thinking, hey, if this $100 goes to zero, my life stays exactly the same.
Right. That's exactly right.
So let's play this out. The coin Tyler bought drops 80%. His $500 is now worth just $100. So can he pay his $400 in bills? Nope, not even close. He hasn't just lost money on a trade, he's completely wrecked his own financial security. He built his house on sand. Okay, so that was their story. Now let's turn this around and make it a practical tool for you. We're going to do a little thought experiment, a personal stress test, to see if you've really followed the rule. I want you to ask yourself this exact question, and you have to be brutally 100% honest with yourself. Imagine it. You wake up, there's been some catastrophic event, and your entire crypto portfolio is worth zero. Gone. What happens next? Now, if your honest answer is anything like what you see here, if it involves not paying rent, borrowing money, or ruining your future plans, that is a massive, flashing red alert warning sign. It means you've put your foundation money into the attic, and you need to fix that immediately. But if your answer sounds more like this, if you think, man, that would really suck, but I'd be okay. Or hey, that was money I was truly willing to lose. If your life would just continue on completely unchanged, then congratulations. You've passed the test. You get it. You've understood the golden rule, and you're investing responsibly. So let's pull this all together. Look, this isn't about being anti-crypto. Not at all. It's about being pro-financial stability so that you can actually engage with this exciting space in a smart, sustainable way for the long run. Right. If you remember...
Right, so the last point there is super important. For the long run, you've got to be able to survive to fight another day. And if you put all of your money into, a handful of high-risk projects that are extremely high-vol projects, like, you might not be able to fight another day. And if you get taken out on a stretcher, well, then it's game over. You can't get into the next, exciting new protocol token that you think is going to perform extremely well. If the game's over, it's over. So
especially if you invest in something like a meme coin, and it just tanks like most of them do and never comes back. There's no, like you're saying, there's no, fighting another day. If you're in Bitcoin and you're, and you don't need that money and you're able to sit on your hands and it, tanks like it has, goes from 125K down to, 70K, 60K, 50K. And you just, have conviction that it's going to
buy more. What you do is you buy more, because if you have that conviction.
Even if you just have the conviction and the discipline to sit on your hands and not sell and just wait for it to come back, chances are, no guarantees, but chances are that, you're going to be, back in the green at some point. But you have to be able to sit on your hands.
Yeah, you really do. So Mike, what is it that Michael Saylor says? He says that the way that you invest in Bitcoin is you buy the 200-week moving average and you hold for 5 years. That's it. It's like, that saying, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah. Oh, we use it in the military all the time.
There you go, man. It's stupid simple. You wait until Bitcoin touches its 200-week moving average. And then here's step 2, you buy. And then here's step 3, you do nothing. So wait, buy, do nothing. That is a really difficult recipe for most people to follow because it's boring and it's slow and it takes time.
I honestly, I enjoy boring. Slow and steady. I'm the tortoise and the hare. I'm all
Yeah.
about just investing, sitting on my hands, and earning in DeFi. Just the lowest risk possible, and just letting it grow. It's honestly that I find that I'm much more successful that way than when I'm chasing quick profits. Because if you can make profits quick, you can lose quick. That's pretty much how it works. Fast.
Yeah, but Mike, what about the Lambos and the dancers and the blow? Like, where does that come in, man?
Well,
When Lambo?
hookers and blow it's all about your budget. It's what you can afford.
So, Mike, is that attic money or not? I don't know.
Well, it depends on your priorities.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely nothing else from this. Please remember this image. This is the entire idea in a nutshell. You cannot have a beautifully furnished house that's sitting on a pile of sand and rubble. You have to build your foundation first. Secure your walls. Then, and only then, can you have some fun decorating the attic. And you've got to be aware of the psychological traps that make so many people ignore this rule. That fear of missing out, right? Or thinking you're smarter than the market, or only hearing about the one guy who got rich while ignoring the thousands who lost everything. These are the things that tempt people into making terrible decisions with money they just can't afford to lose. So, we'll end with this one last question for you to really think about. Take a hard look at your own financial house. Is its foundation solid, built on the rock of an emergency fund and real stability? Or is it resting on the shifting, unpredictable sands of pure speculation? Your answer to that question will determine how well you survive the inevitable storms to come.
Both of those houses suck, man.
I know.
The rock was like,
the rock was all fucked up, and the sand it's sinking in. Like, yeah,
fucked up construction.
Yeah, you gotta fire that contractor. Right. All right, man. Let's take a look at this one. I know your cabin looks great.
Oh, no, I freaking love my place.
Yeah, man. So here, let's learn. We got to do some leering right here.
Let's leer.
We got to leer about research. This is super important. So, how many times have you come across a piece of content on social media and it's super engaging and it makes you just want to, oh wow, that looks like a great project, great coin, great token. I gotta buy. Well, it's probably a good idea before you do any of that to research it yourself. And that means doing a hell of a lot more than watching video content on social. So, research before.
At a minimum, ask AI about it. And I mean, AI is not perfect, but it's better than doing nothing.
Yeah. I mean, dude, like that's the minimum amount of research that you could possibly do. And I think that many people don't even do that. Like you've got to be able to put in some time reading about something for yourself. And if you can't read, you got to go leer about reading.
What is this reading you speak of?
What are these things called? Books.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right?
I just pick up a book and beat it against my head until I learn it.
Yeah, I know those books.
Feed and bam, there it is. Some hot new crypto token that everyone is screaming about. It's going to the moon. And right there, in that moment, you're at a crossroads. One path could lead to incredible gains, and the other, well, it can lead to some pretty big losses. So let's talk about how to tell the difference. So let's meet Mike and Dana. They both hear about this new token called StarChain. Mike sees a TikTok about it, gets that adrenaline rush, that fear of missing out. He clicks the link, sees a slick website and thinks, hey, this looks legit, and he's in. Dana, on the other hand, hears about it from a friend, and her first thought is, let me check first. She decides to do a little homework.
Why is the guy always the idiot?
I know.
Priya was a smart one. Now it's oh man, this
like,
AI.
I know this AI, dude. Like she's smart as fuck. Like reading about the protocol. Like she's got a chart, like printed out on a piece of paper. She's even got a magnifying glass.
Right.
Like, and this guy's just a retard. He's like, oh look, coin number go up, I buy. Like, dude. Why does it have to be so stark? The differences here.
She decides to do a little homework. And this right here, this brings us to the central battle in all of crypto, really.
It's the hype versus the homework. It's that emotional impulse versus cool-headed logic.
So who's playing it smarter here? I mean, it seems obvious, right? The answer boils down to this really simple but incredibly powerful principle that separates the gamblers from the real investors. It's a golden rule that Dana's about to follow. That golden rule is known by a four-letter acronym you've probably seen a million times in the crypto space. DYOR.
Dior. You gotta Dior. Man.
Guy or.
Yeah.
It stands for do your own research. And believe me, it is your single most powerful tool.
So what does it actually mean? Well, at its core, DYOR is all about independent verification. It means you don't just take some influencer's post as gospel. You don't just trust the project's own marketing. You become the investigator. You verify the claims yourself.
So don't trust, verify. So
Yes.
that's super important.
That's another saying that we've said in the military is trust but verify is how we said it. So
Yeah.
it's okay to trust, but you know what? I'm going to take what you said. I'm going to go verify it from multiple sources, because the more sources that you can verify it through, the more credible. That doesn't guarantee, but the more credible that it is.
Exactly. Yep. Don't for me, in this space, I would even go so far as to say, don't trust, and instead verify for yourself. That's what I prefer to do, just because so much of the marketing can be very misleading. So I tend to be distrustful of any marketing, and instead I'll go and dig in on my own. I'll do my own research.
Well, and especially if it's marketing. If it's marketing, it's biased. I mean, if a project is putting out information about their own project, of course it's biased. It's not malicious necessarily. I mean, it can be, but it's just, of course, they're going to try to highlight the positive aspects of their project. They're not going to tell you the negative things.
Right. Yeah. Very true.
No, that might sound a little intimidating, like you need a degree in finance or something, but it's really a process you already know. Think about it. Would you ever drop hundreds of dollars on a new phone without reading a single review? Of course not. DYR is the exact same idea, just for a different kind of purchase.
The process is almost identical. For a new phone, you read reviews, you look for common complaints, you compare it to other models. For a new crypto, same thing. You read up from multiple sources. You actively look for red flags, and you see how it stacks up against similar projects.
I always found it to be so interesting, Mike, when working with private clients. I would ask them about like, hey, you just taking a look at someone's holdings, and it's like, hey, you've got 5% of your portfolio in Rocket coin. You want to tell me a little bit about that? And they're like, oh, well, I saw it on social and looked great. It was going to the moon. It had a little moon image, and I bought it. And you ask, okay, so what type of research did you do on that? And the answer invariably is none.
Yeah.
But then you ask that same person, hey, well, what type of research would you do if you were investing that same amount of money into a stock? And
or a car or any
car, or and the answer is always, well, I would do this, 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 and this. And I think what happens specifically in crypto is people get this emotional pull. It's like they see something, and because crypto is like this new shiny thing that most people really don't understand at all, they'll see something on their phones or on the computer. It will be super emotional. They'll buy in, they'll experience FOMO, and they'll end up, allocating a significant portion of their portfolios to something that they don't understand at all, based off of a post on social media without having done any research on their own. So
and that's the key, David. And what we keep saying is emotion is your enemy.
Yeah.
'Cause that is how you're manipulated. And this is a perfect example. You have cases, of this, with your clients where something triggered emotionally, and all of that logic, that they would usually use, and because these are people that, the people you're working with are, usually, much more established financially and professionally, and, they're older, they're not college kids and stuff like that. So, the fact that it's able to snap them out of that logical, rational mindset of how they would vet a potential investment and full port into a freaking, cum rocket or whatever you called it, it goes to show you how powerful it is, that, triggering that emotional mindset. And that's why you see so much of it in crypto.
Yeah.
The Lambo and the the FOMO and we heard, or if this happens, this is going to going to the moon, and just all of the things that you were going over yesterday with the exclamation points and the excited faces on the on the memes and all
Right.
that different stuff.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost unique to crypto, and people fall for it the most in crypto. And that's why, on DeFi High School, we talk about it all the time so that you can avoid making those mistakes.
Research is research.
Okay, so how does someone like Dana actually do this? Well, she starts by breaking it down and looking at 4 key areas. Let's call them the 4 pillars of research to spot any potential scams or red flags. First up is the team. You have to ask, who are the people actually building this thing? Are their identities public? Are they doxed? Can you find them on LinkedIn or GitHub? Do they have real, verifiable experience? Or are they just a bunch of anonymous avatars? You need to know who's behind the curtain. Next, the product itself. What does this project actually do? Is there something real and working that you can try out? Or is it just a fancy website full of buzzwords and promises of what's coming soon? Because let me tell you, a great idea is completely worthless without execution. Pillar number 3, the token economics.
Quick, number 2 there. This is whenever you hear us, me, David, or anybody talk about utility, our speculative market and a utility market. This is kind of what we're talking about. So, the one that is, fundamentally solid, is a utility, and that is something that has real world utility. It solves a pain point. There's the bigger the pain point it solves, the more profitable it potentially will be. Now, if it's the other one where it's pure speculation, where the crypto market has been for since its inception for the most part, most of the altcoins, it's all promises. We're trying to do this. We're hoping that we're going to be able to solve this pain point. We're hoping banks are going to adopt us. We're hoping institutions are going to use our technology, and bragging about their technology and everything it can do. That's speculation. Utility is XYZ bank or institution has built on us, it has launched, and we are generating revenue or fees from them building. That is utility. That is real value. That is where you want to focus.
Yeah, the word there for me that's important is value. Like,
Yes.
a project has to provide value to its users and not just be rent seeking.
Yes.
It can't just be extractive. It's got to actually provide value first. And
Yeah.
there's a big difference between the protocol actually providing value to its users and the token providing value. Like, the
Yeah.
token itself may be, almost like a meme coin of the protocol. So, there's a big difference between real utility and, just kind of like a great marketing gimmick.
That's why I've been screaming from the rooftops lately about, that these projects, they can have great utility. It can be a great technology. There can be great adoption, but there is a huge difference between that. You can have that, but the tokenomics suck to where buying the token has absolutely no correlation to the success of the protocol.
Right.
So it's, this is part of the do your own research. You need to do your research into the protocol, what they're building, the current state of it, who's adopted it, if it's generating revenue, the value it brings. And you need to look at the tokenomics. If I decide to buy this token, is there a mechanism in place to where that value or that revenue makes its way to token holders in some way? And if it doesn't, and I like to use this as an example because it's a perfect example. XRP, Ripple, the company, very bullish on. I actually tried to invest in the pre-IPO, but the token, I personally would not buy it. Just my 2 cents.
Yeah, there needs to be real utility. And I would say that for the vast majority of the project, like protocol tokens or governance tokens that you see out there, there really isn't any utility at all. And any perceived utility is probably just marketing.
Vaporware.
So, yeah, vapor. Unfortunately, I think most of crypto is still vapor, although it's moving away from that because it seems like, not seems like, it is true that large institutions are starting to adopt this technology. But, you know,
and if you're paying attention and looking at the data, you can see where their focus is.
right. But here's the thing for me about the institutions, though. Like, since when do people want like people who are Bitcoiners, like, you know, like liberty focused, like sovereign focused individuals, they're Bitcoiners. They don't want the institutions like, you know, jumping in and using this stuff, using this technology, like, or at least it doesn't matter if they do or if they don't. But for a lot of these protocols, like much of the marketing is focused heavily on, well, if institution A adopts our technology, then it'll have this impact on the token price. And you know, the problem is that even when you get those types of partnerships, it still doesn't feed through to the token price because there's no connection between the token and the project. So yeah, you know, that's difficult for a lot of people to understand because buying a token is not like buying shares in a company. It is not like buying stock at all.
Again, there was in the US, there was a whole freaking court case that went on for years on this exact topic, you know, between Ripple and you know, in the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission. And it was ruled that most crypto is code, that it's not a security. And the what's the other one? CFTC. They came out recently and said that if something is a security before it's tokenized, it's a security after. If it's not and it's tokenized, then it's not a security after. So there's a lot of clarity that's gone on, and it's not necessarily a good thing that some of these aren't a security. Because if it was a security, then you would basically own a stake in the company or the protocol. So the fact that it was ruled not a security isn't necessarily a good thing for token holders. And
right. But the weird thing about that, Mike, was that it's not a security when it's being dumped on retail, but it is a security if they wanted to sell it to institutions.
Exactly.
That one make sense, man.
Exactly. Well, in the case of XRP,
right.
You know, it might be different on other ones, but yes. So, you know, and I was ignorant on this as well. I mean, you know, up until I did my own research and started really digging into Ripple, you know, because at first, of course, you know, I was listening to, you know, certain channels that was telling me all the things that I wanted to hear, that, you know, these ISO projects were going to, you know, reshape the financial, you know, institutions, and they were going to replace Swift, and they were going to do all these magical things. And it made sense because they needed to be updated. You know, they needed, you know, to bring them in, you know, into the future because, you know, they were using, you know, 1970s, you know, technology to move money and things like that. So it made perfect sense. But as I dug deeper, I started to realize through the tokenomics that there is no correlation between the success of Ripple, the company, and holding the XRP token, especially after, you know, the release of RLUSD. But I only found this stuff out because I did my own research.
Yeah, you know, and it's not just you know, the token that will not be named. You know, it's not just them. It's also a lot of other projects too.
The only reason I use XRP is because it's so popular. And there is plenty of other ones, but that is like the one that's has the spotlight on it all the time.
Yeah. Man, well, let's continue on here.
Is completely worthless without execution. Pillar number 3, the token economics, whereas everyone calls it tokenomics. This is so crucial. What is the token actually for? Does it have a real use inside the project?
Right. See, this is, Mike, this is what we were just talking about. Exactly this.
Funny how that works.
How is it distributed?
I know.
You know, if the team is holding like 80% of the tokens and they're not locked up, that's a huge risk for a massive sell-off down the line. And finally, the community. A healthy project has a
Right.
real organic community that has actual discussions. A giant flashing red flag is when you join their Discord or Telegram, ask a tough question, and you get immediately banned. You want to see open debate and skepticism, not just an echo chamber of hype. All right, so beyond those 4 big pillars, there are some very specific, glaring red flags that should just make you stop dead in your tracks. Let's run through them real quick. Okay, first and most obvious, anybody promising guaranteed returns. If you see this, just run. Seriously, there is no such thing as a guarantee in investing. Legitimate projects always involve risk, and anyone who says otherwise is a scammer, period. Now this one is interesting. An anonymous team isn't always a scam, but it sure makes it a whole lot easier for the founders to just disappear with everyone's money in what's called a rug pull. It completely removes accountability. Be super wary of projects that are all marketing and no substance. You know the type. All sizzle, no steak. If all they have is a white paper and a roadmap, but nothing has actually been built, you're not investing in a product, you're investing in a promise, and that's a gamble. And yes, this old classic, the high-pressure sales tactic. This is designed to do one thing and one thing only: trigger your FOMO and rush you into making a bad decision before you have time to think. A good project doesn't need to pressure you. The value speaks for itself. Okay, so we've talked a lot about the problems in the red flags. Let's build the solution. Let's put together a simple, repeatable research plan that you can use every single time to protect yourself. Here it is, your 6-step DYOR framework. Step 1. Can you understand what it does in simple terms? Step 2. Verify the team is real and credible. 3. Check the competition to see how they stack up. 4. And this is a big one, read the critics. Actively look for the bear case. 5. Evaluate the token's real purpose. And finally, after all that, step 6, assess your own conviction.
Wow, this is a great 6-step process. It really is.
Do you really believe in this thing for the long haul? So, what happened to our 2 investors? Let's circle back to Mike's impulse buy and Dana's patient research and see how things played out. Well, it turns out StartChain was all hype and no substance. The price crashed 90% in just a week. Mike's $200 turned into $20, and he lost $180. Dana, on the other hand, after her research, uncovered all the red flags and decided not to invest a single penny. Mike lost money chasing hype. Dana protected her capital by making an informed choice. So before you ever click that buy button again, you have to stop and ask yourself one very honest question. Am I doing this because of hours of solid research, or am I just scared of missing out? Your answer to that question will tell you everything you need to know. And look, if you take only one single thing away from all of this, let it be this simple phrase. It is the ultimate test for any investment. If you can't explain it simply to someone else, what it does, why it's valuable, and what the risks are, then you probably shouldn't be putting your money into it. That clarity right there is what turns a gamble into a real investment.
And
Right.
this
So
is
if
what I challenge people every time I engage with people on X about XRP. Whenever I put out some alpha, about it, and people start, jumping on me, and the XRP army starts, attacking me. That's what I always say is I'm always like, explain to me how I'm wrong, because if I'm wrong, I'll admit it. You've pointed out stuff that I've been wrong about, and I've gone and done my research.
Never. I don't do that.
No, and I've back and I've been like, hey, you know what? You were right. But I always challenge them. I'm like, articulate with facts and logic, data. Show me in their white paper. Show me off the website, because everything I'm saying is based on that stuff. So show me where I'm wrong, and I'll happily admit that you're right. And it's always you have the IQ of 7, and they always come in with the personal attacks. To me,
Yep.
that's a massive red flag. That means you haven't done more research, and you're getting defensive. You're getting emotional. So
Yeah, man, they call them ad hominem attacks. To the man, ad hominem. And whenever someone, the last resort is, well, if I can't argue the facts, I'll just make fun of the person or call names of the person. Like, yeah, that's always a huge red flag, man. And basically, if you can't describe what the protocol, coin, or token that you bought into does and why there's utility, in one sentence, then you probably shouldn't be in it.
Well, more importantly, you haven't done your research. Because, if you can't, ask me about any project that I'm invested in, and I can explain it, very clearly.
So I bought the STAR token because it's going to the moon. And the utility is I'll be able to spend it when at my moon base.
That's one sentence.
There we go. That's good enough for me.
Right.
So, Mike, I appreciate your time, man. These calls are a lot of fun, bro.
Oh, I fucking love these. This is like the best part of one of the best parts of my day. So
it's so much fun, man.
Brother. I hope you can make it tonight for the red pill. It's going to be.
I will.
Right.
It's going to be fun, man.
I'll make sure when I get that set up, and then I'll chat with you and Jake and on the messages and see if we want to do make up that master class later this afternoon or tomorrow.
Sure. I've got a couple of times available. I just need to make sure that Jake is available too.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Awesome. Well, I appreciate all of you out there, and I really do appreciate the looks like we got about 150, 160 people watching live, and with as in the dumps as this market is, hats off to you. That you're disengaged, and that you're learning these fundamentals. So we hope to see you tomorrow, same time, same place. Until next time, Veteran Crypto out.
Peace.